Yes, sir. Arun sir, now it started. Please go ahead, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Once of all, welcome to this 3-day training program on comprehensive disaster management. Yesterday, we have covered several topics in which Dr. Chandrani Bandyopadhyay ma'am discussed the urban risk management, a case study of Chennai flood 2015, and Dr. Shekhar, Member Secretary KSDMA, discussed the disaster management cycle in respect of a COVID-19 and vulnerability profile of India. Today, Shri Vikram Gurjar, Deputy Commandant and in charge Training Division, he will discuss on institutional framework of country, and after that, we will proceed to a presentation on COVID-19 present status and basics of do's and don'ts and basic concepts of disaster management, which will be covering by me only. And Dr. Shri Shekhar Chaturvedi, Assistant Professor NIDM, he will discuss on disaster management plan, importance and structures and silent features of DM Plan Act, DM Act and DM policy. And Major General V.K. Nayak, sir, Senior Consultant and DMA, he will be discussing on mechanisms of emergency response. And after that, we have a question and answer sessions with the participants and a panelist. So moving towards today's program, I invite Shri Vikram Gurjar, Deputy Commandant, and he is in charge of training division in NIDM, and he is from basically from BSF background. He is a army person, and now he is attached with NIDM. I welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir. Please give a charge to Shri Vikram Gurjan for sharing content.
We have already tested. He can do. Yeah, it's visible, sir, now. Your voice is in mute mode, sir. Vikram, sir.
Unmute.
Yeah, now it's fine. You can start, sir.
Thank you, Arunji. Very good evening and a warm welcome to all. So without taking much of your time, Arun has given a introduction of me. So I'll start away, proceed with the presentation. And the topic on which I'll be delivering a presentation is on institutional mechanism of disaster management in Indian context. To begin with, let us understand what do we mean by institutional mechanism. As institutional mechanism, it is made up of two words, institutional and mechanism. Institutional refers to institutions or a set of institutions, and mechanism refers to a system. So in a very simple and logical definition, we can say that institutional mechanism or a framework refers to a set of formal organizational structures. Formal, why? Because we have defined roles, defined set of responsibilities for these organizations, defined roles, rules, and formal and informal as well, because informal resources for service provisions. So this is what is meant by institutional framework or the setup, and it very categorically and crystal clear manner defines or outlines the responsibilities of each and every organization which is being included or involved in the process of disaster mitigation or disaster management. And as we all know, and it is very widely said and proved, that this disaster management concept or the activity is an integrated, concerted, and coordinated efforts of all these various organizations who are being involved in the process of disaster management or disaster risk reduction. So let's begin with, and it would be better because that I give a very fair idea in the global and the world Indian context that how this disaster management concept came into being. So what do we mean by this? That what is the genesis? Let's have a brief view or a look at the genesis of this disaster management theory. So this is the mandate that before beginning each and every this online or this webinar or FDP programs, we have to share our views and we have to reiterate this efforts and the ways and means and preventive measures how to protect ourselves, our families, and the society as a whole from this pandemic coronavirus. So these are the measures which have been discussed yesterday as well, and each and everyone can clearly go through the same. So I don't think that is required that I should repeat them. So let's get back to the genesis. So IDNDR, International Decade for Natural Disasters Reduction. This UN General Assembly in 1990s or on 1990, the decade of 1990 was designated as IDNDR because disasters is not a new concept or a new notice. It has been noticed and we have been facing this disaster since ages. So in 1990, this UN General Assembly designated this decade of 1990s as IDNDR, and after this the because why it was designated, because let's they were conscious and assertive about that how can we deal with this disaster management, how can we prevent, or what efforts can be put in to minimize the risk, and how can we cope with this. So the first conference or the first effort which was organized in 1994 at Yokohama, termed as Yokohama Conference in 1994. And this Yokohama Conference in 1994 is basically a main outcome of the midterm review of this IDNDR. And at this conference, the countries or the members of the UN, they adopted the Yokohama strategy for a safer world. And during this, what was the outcome? That there was a certain set of guidelines and 10 principles for disaster prevention, preparedness, and mitigation. So they established 10 principles for the strategy. Along with the 10 principles, a plan of action and a follow-up of the same was also ratified. So this is termed as the first World Conference on Disaster Reduction. Then we have HFA, Hugo Framework of Action. This is the second World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, and it can be termed as a global blueprint for DRR efforts between 2005 and 2050. Because till 2000, we had the Yokohama Plan of Action, and for the next 10 years, we have HFA. And what was the main goal of this HFA? The main goal of this HFA was to substantially reduce the disaster losses by the next 10 years, that is from 2005 to 2015, in lives, livelihood, and health, in the social, economical, and environmental assets of communities and country as a whole. And this HFA was basically organized and to take a stock of the progress made on our DRR efforts since the Yokohama Conference of 1999 and to plan for the next 10 years, as I've said, to 2005 to 2015. It has certain goals and priorities. It has 3 strategic goals and it has 4 priorities for action. And all the governments around the globe were committed to take actions. And those actions which we were committed were aimed to reduce the disaster risk and adopt a guideline or a set of principles to reduce the vulnerabilities to natural hazards. So ultimate aim was to reduce the disaster losses. Then we have Sendai framework, again in 2015. The Sendai framework is as this HFA was aimed with the time frame of 2005 to 2015, the Sendai framework has a time frame period of 15 years, that is from 2015 to 2030. And what was the goal of the Sendai framework? Again, to substantially reduce the disaster risk losses by the next 15 years, that is from 2015 to 2030, in the lives and livelihood, in the social, economical, physical, cultural, economic, and environmental assets of communities and countries as a whole. So, the second conference, that is Sendai Framework, it was organized in March 2015. In HFA, we had 168 countries, and in Sendai, we had 187 countries as UN members. The main purpose, which we can say, that the aim is again to reduce the disaster losses and to prevent this loss in the life or loss of livelihood and communities. Then we have this Sendai framework has 7 targets, out of which 4 emphasized on substantial reductions, as clearly mentioned in the slide, and 3 aims at improvement or increment, that with an aim to substantially reduce the disaster losses. And the basic which we can say that the link between HFA and Sendai is that the fourth priority of this HFA became the first priority of action for Sendai framework, that is reducing risk and understanding reduction disasters. So then we have this SDGs. These SDGs in 2015, basically they are the advanced version of Millennium Development Goals. The SDGs are a version of this basically in 2012 in Rio de Janeiro, out of which 17 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, they are aimed for sustainable development, which are required to be adopted by the world leaders, and they aimed at to end or eradicate all form of poverty, fight inequalities, and tackle climate changes. And the main emphasis was that while all these concerted efforts were put in or they were put into effect with an aim that it ensures that no one is left behind, everybody is included. And as we all know, these 17 goals or the SDGs, they have been adopted by UN Assembly in September 2015. And to look to the, they are part of Agenda 2030, and they are in sync with these Sendai framework. And what is this Agenda 2030? This is an universal agenda and it applies to all countries and all actors. It means that nobody should be left behind. Everybody is included. Then we have this COP21, Paris Climate, is also known as Paris Climate. The main aim is to reduce this carbon outlet, and it is an agreement in which all the states, governments of the parties, they reach a landmark judgment to combat the climate change to an acceptable and by intensifying their actions and investments for a low carbon future. And what was the aim? The aim was to keep the global temperature well below, because as we have seen, if we do not do any endeavors or we do not put any efforts, our temperature will increase by 2021 with a 4 degree. And so it was aimed and that we must put in efforts to keep it well below 2000, well below 2 degrees. But now it has again been revised, the limit has been revised that it should be kept within the limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Then we have AMCDRR. This AMCDRR is an intergovernmental conference, and this is the intended outcome of AMCDRR. The 7th inaugural meeting of AMCDRR was held in 2016 in November in 2000 Delhi. And this is also after the introduction of the Sendai framework for DRR. And the intended outcome of these AMC DRR was to adopt an Asia region plan for implementation of Sendai framework. And our honorable PM has already outlined the 10 points agenda, and it is keeping in mind these 10-point agendas of AMC DRR and the SDGs. NIDM is organizing all these webinars, and these FDPs and online training programs, keeping in mind all the SDGs and these PM standpoint agenda. As we have seen, and as we all know, that after the Yokohama conference, there was a paradigm shift in this policy approach towards disaster risk reduction world over, including India. And what was the paradigm shift? Earlier, we were reactive, response oriented. Now there was shift to proactive and this approach. So there was a paradigm shift from the erstwhile relief or response-centric approach to a proactive, preventive, mitigation, and preparedness driven approach, because it includes the culture of mitigation, preparedness, prevention. And what was the need? So as to for conserving the developmental gains and to minimize the loss of life, livelihood, and property caused by these disastrous or hazardous events. So, this is what, but as the topic says that I have to talk about majorly on institutional setup. So, on December 2005, Government of India took a defining step by enacting the DM Act 2005, because institutionalization was ratified or it came into effect with the introduction of DMA Act. But let's get back into the genesis, that how it carved out. So after the witness of this Odisha super cyclone in 1999 and various disasters, the Government of India constituted a high power committee under the chairmanship of Sri J.C. Pant, the then Secretary to Government of India, and to study and to frame out and to suggest a systematic approach. And as this committee has also suggested, and it has noticed and seen and taken into account this shift from this paradigm shift from relief-centric approach to multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral, and holistic approach. And similarly, in the 11th Five-Year Plan, this also outlined a multi-pronged strategy for total risk management for sustainable development. So, this committee submitted its reports in 2001. So, this committee also witnessed the havoc created by the Gujarat or Bhuj earthquake. So what was the results, and as a recommendation, and what were the results of this committee? That a national roadmap on disaster management was prepared, was presented. So we had development of disaster management framework, which we will discuss at all levels, national, state, and district level, and the main enactment of Disaster Management Act 2005. So this 2005 Act of Disaster Management Act, it aims to provide an institutional mechanism for a holistic and coordinated approach towards disaster management. This act provides or envisages a three-tiered disaster management structure in India, in our country, at national, state, and district level. And under this act itself, various institutions like NDMA at center, SDMA is at state, and DDMA at district level, NIDM, NECs, SECs, NDRF, and disaster-related funds were also established. This act compromises of 79 sections and 11 chapters. It defines disaster and disaster management in its new concept after the incorporating the paradigm shift effects. This provides for institutional mechanism for monitoring and implementation of the plans prepared, and it ensures measures by various wings of the government at all levels for the prevention and mitigation of disasters. This also envisages and clearly defines the roles of local authorities, that is Panchayati Raj institution, municipalities in disaster management at district level. It puts in place the disaster management plans at all the levels. It acts provides for NDMA, SDMA, DDMA, NDRF, and which is further NDRF, that is National Disaster Response Fund, further renamed after 15th Commission as National Disaster Risk Management Fund, and SDRF as State Disaster Risk Management Fund. It provides for penalties of for obstruction, false claims, misappropriation, etc. on the part of the organizers or the actors, and there shall not be no discrimination on the ground of sex, caste, community, descent, or region, while providing compensation and relief for the affected victims. So let's discuss the institutional framework. As we know, in our federal system, we have central government at the center and state government at the state level. So at central government, we have MHA as the nodal ministry for disaster management subject. With MHA, we have it as NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management, NDRF, and NDMA is the main policy-making authority, premier organization which deals with national disasters management subjects, and Honorable PM is the chairman, and it is being assisted by NEC in performing and executing its functions. Similarly, at state governments, we have SDMAs on the lines of NDMA. Honorable CM is the of the concerned CM is chairman of the respective SDMA, and the NEC. And similarly, at state level, we have state executive committees. Honorable Chief Secretary of the concerned state is the chairman of the SEC, and Home Secretary is the chairman of NEC. And similarly, under SDMAs, we have district administration, we have DDMAs, district disaster management authorities, and under them, which are being headed or chaired by the district magistrate or the district collector or the deputy chairperson, whatsoever nomenclature he or she may be known. And similarly, we have Panchayati Raj institution, panchayats, and municipalities under DDMA, district administration. But as I've said, that this dealing with disaster management is integrated, concerted, and a coordinated effort. So apart from dedicated or designated government structures, we have certain, we need ought to include the efforts or the cooperation of scientific and technical institutions, academic institutions. We have to have the corporate sectors. We have to have on board the professional bodies, NGOs, and certain like we have SDRFs on the line of NDRF. So this is the national disaster management structure prevalent in India. So let's discuss one by one all the organizations dealing with disaster management. So we start with NDMA. This NDMA is headed by the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, and it can have up to a member of maximum 9 members. And it may constitute an advisory committee consisting of experts of DM, NEC, that is National Executive Council, assisted. And I would like to mention that it is NEC who prepares the plan, and the plan prepared by NEC is being approved by NDMA. And similarly, NDMA lays down the policies, plans, and guidelines for disaster management. And this national plan prepared by NEC and approved by NDMA, it shall include measures for prevention and mitigation plan of disasters, and having the This clause of integration of mitigation measures in the plans, preparedness and capacity building. It shall recommend guidelines for the minimum standards of relief provided to persons affected by the disaster. Then it is NDMA, it approves the National Management Plan. And the key responsibilities of NDMA includes the laying down of policies, plans, and guidelines for disaster management for ensuring timely and effective response to disasters. It also lays down policies on disaster management plan. It approves plans prepared by various ministries of the Union. And it lays down the guidelines to be followed by state authorities in drawing up their respective state plans. And NDM is also mandated to recommend guidelines for the minimum standards of relief, as I've said, which are required to be provided to persons affected by the disasters. It recommends provisions for fund for mitigation. It provides support for other countries affected by major disasters as and when determined by the central government. And it is also mandated to take such other measures for prevention, mitigation, or preparedness and capacity building for dealing with disasters as and when deemed fit by the authority. So with NDMA, we have NEC. This is National Executive Council. It is constituted under Section 8 of DMA 2005. This NEC assists NDMA in performance of its functions, delivering its responsibilities. Home Secretary to the Government of India is the ex officio chairman, and the various members are the secretaries to the various ministries or departments to the Government of India. And along with that, which are mentioned in this slide, the Chief of Integrated Defense Staff of the Chief of Staff Committee is an ex officio member. And on the lines of NDMA, it may constitute one or more subcommittees for the efficient discharge of its functions. And the main function, it is also performing and involved in coordinating and monitoring body for disaster management to prepare a national plan, monitor the implementation of national policy. So as we have NDMA at central level, we have SDMAs at states level. The CM is the head of the SDMA. It can have 8 members which are to be nominated by the CM, and out of those 8 members, one of the members may be designated as the chairperson, vice chairperson by this respective CM. And Chief Secretary is the chairperson of the State Executive Committee of the concerned state, and it may also constitute an advisory committee of experts as and when necessary on the lines followed by NDM. Then under state mechanism, we have DDMAs, that is District Disaster Management Authority at all districts in all states, and it is the state government which established DDMAs in each district. These DDMAs are headed by a DM or the district collector or the deputy commissioner, and it shall consist of members not exceeding 7. And this limit is being prescribed by the state government, and this DDMA shall act the district planning, coordinating and implementing body for the disaster management. So it is the main local institution or at district level, because all the executive functions or the role starts at the district level. And it has the responsibility for planning, coordination, and implementation of disaster management. And it has the power to examine the construction in any area in the district to enforce that whether the safety standards are being followed. And if not, they are to be stopped. And it also decides and caters to arrange for the relief measures and response to the disasters at the district level, because it is the local level, the district is the local level at which we need to respond. Then similarly, we have NIDM at central level. This NIDM and National Institute of disaster management. It is the premier institute for capacity building, and we are imparting training in the field of disaster management. We are assigned with the nodal responsibilities for human resource development, capacity building, training, research, documentation, policy advocacy in the field of disaster management. We promote a culture of prevention involving all stakeholders, and we also indulge in strategic partnership with various ministries and departments of the central, state, and local governments, even including the academia, research and technical organization in India and even abroad, and with the other bilateral and multilateral international agencies. We also deal with the research, documentation, preparation of training modules, reports, etc. And this NIDM is also constituted under DMA 2005. So at center level, we have this, at policy making, we have NDMA. For capacity building, we have NIDM. And for response purpose, we have this National Disaster Response Force, NDRF, and this is the specialized or the specialist response force, and it has been constituted for the purpose of a specialist response to a threatening disaster situation under the same DM Act 2005. And as we all know, the responsibility of managing disaster is India is that of states, because though this disaster management is a collective subject, but the first responder is the state. So MHA is the nodal ministry in the central government, but when calamities of severe nature occur, the central government sends NDRF to states on their request, and we have witnessed or seen the deployment of NDRF on the state's requisition at various times. So at central level, we have National Disaster Response Force. So at state level, we have State Disaster Response Force. This NDRF is under the NDMA and or the Ministry of this Home Affairs, and it is being headed by an IPS officer, uh, and the Director General is the head of this NDRF. At present, it has 12 battalion functional, 4 additional battalion has been raised. The 13th raised battalion is undergoing its basic mandatory training at Ladowal in Punjab. And the NDRF has 4 dedicated battalions capable of responding to radiological, nuclear, biological, and chemical disasters. So, as I've said, that 4 additional, so the total comes to 16, out of which this is the breakup from each CAPF forces, and this NDRF is 100% and completely deputationist force, and each battalion has a strength of 1149 personnel, and as I've said that 4 of the battalions are specialized on nuclear, biological, and chemical disasters. These are the locations of NDRF battalions. Now we have certain nodal ministries who are assigned with the disasters categorically. This flood, tsunami, cyclone, earthquake are being dealt by Ministry of Home Affairs, drought by Ministry of Agriculture, biological disasters by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, chemicals disasters by Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, nuclear disasters by Ministry of Atomic, air by Ministry of Civil Aviation, railways by Ministry of Railways, and so on. Then we have National Disaster Management Plan 2016, and this is consistent with the approaches which are being promoted globally by the UN, keeping in line with the Sendai framework for disaster reduction and this Paris Agreement or this COP21 and the SDGs. So this National Disaster Management Plan, it has 10 elements which are being clearly reflected in the slide. Each and every participant can go through. But here I would like to mention that this NDM plan has been further reviewed in 2019, and 3 chapters keeping in sync with the 3 main goals of Sendai framework, COP21, and this SDGs have been included in the revised edition. So we have, this is the PM's 10-point agenda and is AMCDRR. These are the 10-point agenda. And one unique thing which I would like to reiterate, that even if you take out this disaster management, these goals of PM's 10-point agenda inculcates or includes the each and every efforts required to be put in for sustainable development or a complete sustainable development with the aim with for leaving no one behind. So it holds good and its sanctity at all levels in all form of our efforts. Similarly, these are the roles of central state government, DM. As I've said, that this is the collective responsibility of state and central government. But state is the first responders because they are the one who are being affected and they are the first who have to react, because they can only feel the pain and they can only feel the brunt. So it is the state who has to respond first, and out of the state, it is the local or the local community or the organizational structure at the local level is the first responder. So during major disasters, central government supplements the efforts of the state government, like it deputes NDRF on the state's request. So we have Constitution of National Disaster Response Force, NIDM, we have National Disaster Response Fund, State Disaster Response Fund, which in 15th Commission, Finance Commission, they have been renamed as National Disaster Risk Mitigation Fund and State Disaster Risk Mitigation Fund simultaneously. And these mitigation funds are to be utilized for projects exclusively addressing mitigation at national, state, and district level. Earlier, we used to have CFR, that is Calamity Risk Fund, and NCCF, National Calamity Contingency Fund, and Calamity Relief Fund, till 2005, before the enactment of DDMA Act, and out of which the center has 75% of the share and states have 25% of the share in CRF. And this NCCF was completely owned and managed by central government. After the enactment of 2005 DDMA Act, this CRF was further merged, or we can say it was renamed as State Disasters Response Fund in 2005. And NCCF was further renamed as National Disaster Response Fund in 2005. In 15th Finance Commission, these are being renamed as DRMF. That the mitigation word was involved at both the levels, center and state. So a dedicated fund for mitigation efforts for the purpose of mitigation was involved. In NDRF, earlier we have 18 to 20%, that is 80% for response and 20% for mitigation. And similarly in SDRF, we have to have 20% for mitigation and 10% for capacity building, 30% for recovery and reconstruction, and 40% for response and relief. Like we have witnessed and seen this paradigm shift approach. So the points or the culture of preparedness, response, mitigation, reconstruction, relief, capacity building have also been incorporated, and they are clearly visible and seen in our dedicated efforts, keeping in mind the financial measures as well. So This is how we have to go a long way in our all-out concentrated efforts. And this National Policy on Disaster Management 2009, it has been formulated and approved in October 2009, and it lays down the roadmap and directions for all government endeavors in the field of disaster management, and the copy of same is available at www.ndma.gov.in. And here I would like to request and inform all the participants that we also have IDR, in India Disaster Resource Network, which is being manned and looked after by NDMA, and it is a resource directory which all you should go, so that you can have a very fair idea that what all resources are available with the concerned actor or the facilitator or the reactor who has to take a decision, who has to act upon, and what all are required and what effort resources are available with whom. And this also helps and facilitates for the optimum and the best use of the available resources, and what else is required and what all addendum and rectifications we need to go for. And with this, I put my words to rest. And if there are any queries, you all are most welcome. Thank you. Over to you, Arun.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful presentation on institutional mechanism of disaster management in country. Now, I will go through my presentation. I will share my screen first. Is PPT visible to you all?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. As we know that it is a corona time, so this is it is mandatory that we have to go through some corona virus prevention tips, and this is prepared by our own institute, National Institute of Disaster Management, that we have to wear a mask properly, wash your hand with the soap and water, avoid touching, and keep social distancing and cleaning surface regularly. So these are some tips which we have to follow on and in a regular basis. Today I am going to cover a topic of COVID-19 present status and disaster management concepts. For that, we will go quickly on pandemic status at a global level. At a global level, we have crosses around 4.39 crore cases of coronavirus, and respectively deaths are 11.7 lakhs, and recovery cases are more than 3 crore cases as compared to the last month cases. Now, pandemic status in India. In India, we have that 79.9 lakhs cases have been reporting till today, and out of which that 37 lakhs that has been reported, and 1.2 lakh deaths has been reported. It is mistakenly right amount, and active cases in country are around 6.10 lakh. Recovery rate is nearby 90% for today's report, and that rate is around 1.50. And Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka are the worst affected states in the country. If we go on the prevention tips for the treatment of COVID-19, as I earlier mentioned, that wear masks, avoid close contact with infected people, avoid touching eyes, nose, and mouth. So these are some safety tips which we have to follow in our daily routine. Stay home when infected, cover while coughing and sneezing, throw back use of tissues and clothes when in fact frequently touch objects and surface. So these are some tips which we people generally know. Now coming to the basic concepts of disaster management, as we know that disaster are the mainly of a two types, natural and human induced disaster. And natural disasters are when those disasters which have causing or those disasters which have a cause of a natural, and human induced disaster are that in which there is some parts of a human induced, there is an involvement of a human beings. So there are 8 words on my screen: disaster, hazard, vulnerability, and risk, preparedness, mitigation, and response. Preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery are the part of a disaster management cycle. Yesterday, Dr. Shekhar has already discussed these words in when he is speaking about the COVID-19 and the disaster management cycle. Now, I will focus on disaster hazards, vulnerability, and risk. Many people are confused that what is a hazard and what is vulnerability and what is disaster. As in the simple words, a hazard is a potential damaging phenomena in which have a capacity to destroy the environment, life loss, agriculture loss, property loss, etc. So hazard is in simple word, it is a kind of a potential damaging phenomena, a kind of phenomena, a kind of power, a kind of potential that have capacity to destroy the environment or wildlife or agriculture laws or etc. It is in the simple word, it's known to a hazard. On the other hand, disaster is an event which has occurred or which have destroyed the environment. Learning from this picture, we have to that there is a hazard from the this is a hazard, that is a break, the stone has been broken down and this is fall down on that man particularly which is standing near the stone. So for that man there are different types of vulnerability is simple, that what are the expected number of life loss, what were the loss to this person if this stone fall down on him, he may died or he may hurt by any kind of injury. So hazard is a potential that this stone has a potential to destroy this man. And this vulnerability may be due he can die, he can hurt or anything for this man. And vulnerability can be different to one perspective to the another and one person to the another. As disaster is a catastrophic mishap, calamity, or a grievance occurrence in the any area arising from the natural and man-made causes or by the accident-related negligence which results into a substantial loss of a life or a human suffering or a damage to and destruction of the property or damage to the degradation. And it may be from the it is beyond the coping capacity of a community of a affected area. So disaster is an event. This is definition which is from the Disaster Management Act 2005. So the act is saying that it is a catastrophic mishap or event, a bigger event or mishap or calamity which has potential or which has occurred in any area in any affected area and and cause a human suffering, damage to destruction to the property, damage degradation to the wildlife sanctuaries and all. So it is a kind of it is a disaster. And the what is hazard, as earlier tell, that hazard is a potential damaging phenomena. The High Power Committee has identified the 31 types of a disaster. The first type of disaster are water and climate related disaster, flood and drainage in management, cyclones, tornado, hurricanes. We all know this type of disaster in a day-to-day life. That what so this kind of disasters related to the water, that snow avalanches, heat waves and cold waves, drought, sea erosion, thunder and lightning, tsunami. Tsunami, we know that we have encountered in 2004 tsunami, which was in nearby around 10,000 people have died around in this 2000 tsunami. And that geological related disasters are the another type of disaster which is just related to the earth, landslide, mud flow. We know landslides and mud flows are very common in the hilly areas in which a huge amount of land is eroded from one place to the another place, and it cause damage to the houses, it cause damage to the people, damage to the environment also. Earthquake, we know, dam failure, dam burst, mining disasters. There is another type of disaster, chemical, industrial, nuclear disaster, CBRN, chemical and industrial disaster, nuclear disaster, etc. As I am, this time is very concerned, so I am going very quickly. In accident-related disaster, fires, forest fire, urban fires, mining, flooding, oil spill, major building collapse, serial bomb blast, festival-related disaster, electrical disasters and fire, road, air accident, railway accident, and port and village fires. We are very well known about these type of disasters, and we encountered in daily life with many of them. As we know that we have many times we have listened that the road accident and related to the rail accidents in our news clippings and on the TV when we watch our televisions. Biological related disasters are the biological. Today we are living in a pandemic that is a majorly and a highly one we can say it is a major disaster, major biological disaster actually, in which we are living today's life. That is coronavirus, or in a simple word, COVID-19. It is a biological disaster. Example. Uh, Another disaster which come in the category of a biological disasters are biological epidemics, pest attacks, cattle epidemics, food poisoning, etc. Vulnerability described that it is a degree of loss to a given element or a set of elements resulting from the occurrence of a natural phenomena of a given magnitude. It can be expressed in the scale features of 0 to 1. If 0, then no damage. If 1, it is totally damaged. So vulnerability can be described as degree of loss, and vulnerability may be different to different positions. If we are sitting, for example, if we are sitting in a room, then vulnerability of if ceiling fan fall down, the vulnerability to me is another different from my my colleagues or which are sitting with me. So if the ceiling fan fall down, then it create problem, and vulnerability to me is that if I hurt, if it stuck on my head, or if fallen down on my thighs or something, so it create problems. So vulnerability to my different on my only different to different parts, and it may be differ to one person to the another. So vulnerability are of different types. I will discuss in that property. One, physical vulnerability. Physical vulnerability may be determined as aspect of such as population density levels, remoteness. For example, I will give an example that wooden homes are likely to collapse in the earthquake but are more vulnerable to the fire. If we talk about the Japan are very much advanced in they are advanced in their techniques, and they have developed modules for the earthquake, and they made their homes for the wooden, but these wooden houses are more prone to the fire. So it is a physical vulnerability which can be seen as a part of a social vulnerability. In social vulnerability, for example, when flooding occurs in a citizens such as elderly people, children's, elderly, differently able, they are more vulnerable to a part of a society. Because if any suppose karo, if we take example of a place where there is a flooding, so the people who are young, they can easily come out from their houses, but the people who are elderly, differently able, they might take some time, and they might we can get into the flooding also. Economic vulnerability, if we take example of economic vulnerability, poor families may live in the squatter because they cannot afford a good houses, which will be a safer a place for them. So they live in a small houses. They cannot afford more expensive areas. Environmental vulnerability, as we know that in as we are going deforestation day by day, and that we are going towards development and development sector, but we are not taking care of the environment, so it create pollutions, it creates problems related to the environment. Now, risk is a expected life loss, person injury, damage to the property, destruction to the economy due to the particular natural phenomena, and it's therefore the product of a specific risk element. So, in a simple word, risk is known to be expected number of lives. So, we suppose we take example of any disaster. So, it can be if disaster, if something, if we take example of a cyclone from Odisha, when the IMD generate a early warning, and they create and they are aware the people, and their awareness campaigns are been campaigns will be done by the authorities. So they uh, provide the information. They provide information related to the what kind extent, at what extent the cyclone could become. So they provide the exact information that please go beyond the leave at your houses, evacuate from the places which are more prone to the cyclones. So they generate this early warning related to the that what effect this cyclone can be created. So it is, as we come into the risk, it is a risk that they providing the information related to this. If we are not leaving that place, it could be create to the problem to our environment. It create problems to the it create problems related to the death related issues and all. So it is a risk. Disaster management. When it's come to disaster management is defined as an organization and a management of resources and responsibility for dealing with the humanitarian aspects of emergencies in a particular area, preparedness, response, recovery, in order to lessen the impact. So it is a kind of organization which has a responsibility to reduce the risk and to lessen the impact of any disaster. And it work only for the humanitarian aspect, except disaster management aim to reduce the it is also aim to reduce or to avoid the potential losses from the hazards as sure to promote the and appropriate assistance to the victims of in a disaster and achieve rapid effectively recovery. It is a organization. If we come to the disaster management cycle, disaster management there are three phases: the pre-disaster, response, and post-disaster. In I will explain this in very quick from this slide. Disaster management parts are four as they are. Dr. Shekhar yesterday discussed the disaster management cycle. I will discuss a small bit. Mitigation, preparedness, and response and recovery are the four pillars of disaster management cycle. What is mitigation? Mitigation is the everything which we do for to minimize the effect of a disaster. For example, building codes, zoning, vulnerability analysis, public education, etc. are the part of mitigation. And when you come to preparedness, in preparedness we are doing planning to how to respond and what we have to do. For example, in this we have doing preparedness plans, emergency exercises, mock drills, etc. These are the part of a preparedness. And in response, responses refer to the efforts which are which we do to create less impact of a disaster. If an event occurred, then we have to impact in which we have to do search and rescue operations. And as we know that NDRF is a apex body that do search and rescue, and people and the local community also do search and rescue operations in which they search out the options and they provide relief to the people. Emergency relief means that we are providing emergency relief like medical facilities, food and shelters, etc. These are the part of emergency relief. And in recovery mode, we are doing trying to build backup and just create the temporary houses, grant and medical cares over people which are badly impact from the any kind of a disaster. And we just wanted to convert. Thank you. This is a small presentation from my side. Now I invite Shri Shekhar Chaturvedi, Assistant Professor NIDM, that he will be discuss on disaster management plan, importance and its structure, and silent features of DM Act and DM policy pertaining to a DDMP. Over to you, sir. Shri Shekhar Chaturvedi.
Thank you, Arun. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
PPT visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll be explaining about the disaster management plan. Why plan is important, and whether in the DM Act and the DM policy have we talked about this plan. So this is the slide already explained, so I'll just go through that. So planning, as we all know, yes, it is basically the advanced action that we take in order to achieve a goal, or so decide to achieve certain objectives. Uh, all the actions that we take prior to what things are there is planning. It is basically, if we talk of disaster management planning, it is basically going into preparedness, learning, action, and open to new ideas. So this is how the disaster management planning is there. Management, optimal utilization of the uh, existing resources, available resources to achieve a certain goal. And in disaster, you have majorly two goals: reduce the loss of life and property, and second, stabilizing the situation. So for these two, we work. We work beforehand so that we yield good results in terms of saving the life and in terms of uh, utilization of the resources. It also talks about the planning also talks about clear roles and responsibilities. Why we talk of clear roles and responsibilities? Because one, disaster management is not single man's effort, single organization's effort. And second, if you have different stakeholders who have different ideas and different protocols to follow, there will be a mess on ground. So if you have clear roles and responsibilities, your accountability is fixed, your uh, output is fixed, and when you come in, your coordination becomes easier. This is picture of disaster. We know what disaster does. You have pictures of Chennai also. You can imagine pictures of Chennai, picture of Sikkim, all that, all these efforts. These are the losses. Why we plan. Apart from the coordination and all that, it also takes you back a certain time period. Uh, so to when you come back, the investment that you will be doing in building back better is more than what you had invested earlier. So that gap is what if you plan in advance, then you can minimize that economic loss also, and also you can say whatever gap you have in the fulfillment or investment, you can fill in. You can have different role players for that, wherein I'm not going into that detail because that part will be covered by Major General Nayak on that issue. So I'm not going into that detail. Reasons why planning is important. One, why you say planning? Every time you say planning, why you say? Because one, as I was discussing, that preparedness, learning, actionable, and new ideas. So when you talk of new ideas, you have evaluation. Disasters, every disaster give you new opportunity, and it gives you new dimensions to address. So whatever plan you are making, it has to be a dynamic process. It cannot be a static process, and it should not be such document that people don't refer it at all. So it has to be actionable. So one, planning is important because one, it gives us a clear goal, and lets us keep focus on that goal. Safety of not only the survivors but also of the responders. Optimal utilization, because it is management, it is optimal utilization of resources, identification of gaps in the resources, and identification of manpower as can be assisted. Cost effectiveness, because if you plan, you have clear roles and responsibilities, duplication efforts is reduced, so that gives you cost effectiveness. And effective control. Why effective control? Because you have planned, you know who will do what, and if you know that who will do what, you can easily manage, monitor, and control the person. So these are certain things, certain points why planning is important. There may be more, but because if you go on ground, you can have n number of importance of the planning. But I thought these are the things which majorly encompass majority of the things. Avoid ad hoc hasty decisions. You have clear roles and responsibilities. Unity and coordination. Motivation. Why motivation? Because you know that what you have to do. Second, a right person at the right place at the right time gives confidence to the survivors also, and confidence to the responder also. Because at first instance, if you go on ground and you see that you are failing, your motivation level goes down. So but if you are clear that what you have to do, and you know that when you are trained also for that, your capacity is also enhanced for that, and you go on ground, your motivation level is high, and you get the things managed in a better way. Encouragement to new ways. Why? Because you are planning at the 0 hour. You are not planning on ground. You are planning at the 0 hour. So when it is 0 hour, you can think of ways, effective ways of management. Situation stabilization, effective management, because everybody has clear roles. Resources placement for timely action is what planning also gives you, that where to keep the resource, to reduce the response time, and for timely action at the right place. This is what planning can do. Destruction loss, yes, it is reduced because you are a concerted planned effort is going on. These are the process of planning, that whenever disaster strikes, you have a goal, that you have to stabilize the situation, you have to have clear passage of the survivors, food supply to the survivors, and reduction of the losses. You gather information about the disaster, that where went wrong and what you have to do. Gather the information about people who are coming in to support. Have clear objectives on what to achieve, how to achieve. Based on objectives, get the strategies, what are the actions that can be taken, possible actions that can be taken. And based on the available resources and manpower resources, and the after going through the area about with the information that you have gathered, you zero in on tactics, that what is the exact strategy, actionable strategy that can be implemented, that is tactics. You implement that tactics, and then you evaluate, and you achieve the goal. So that is what the entire management cycle is there. When we come into disaster management plan, you have certain chapters. Area profile, hazard, risks, vulnerability, capacity profile is must for every disaster management plan. So major focus is basically on hazard, vulnerability, and capacity analysis, because this will give you the direction of mitigation measures, direction of response measures, who all stakeholders yeah, are to be got into action, to be contacted, who can come into support, what exactly would you require on ground. So these are, if you have better HVC analysis, hazard, vulnerability, and capacity analysis, then the better you are on ground. SOP, response, Major General Naik would be discussing on that. Relief reconstruction are two portions wherein they both lead to a better recovery, which we call build back better. Infrastructure development, yes, everything with an eye of mitigation is what is required. If you have a mitigation eye, then certainly whatever development, whatever activity you will be doing, that will certainly not add on to the risk, but will be reducing the risk. So you must have the checklist, what actions to be taken, where the resources that are coming from outside are to be collected, how they are to be distributed, what resources are to be distributed, what resources are needed, need assessment. That all planning gives you emergency operations center, which everybody on ground knows that whenever disaster strikes, you have a district emergency operations center, then state emergency operations center activated, wherein all the ESFs, the emergency support functions, come in, sit, discuss, and assist the team on the ground in terms of emergency plan, contingency planning, and also in terms of provisioning of the resources. Media and information management, very important, because this management will lead to better output in terms of your media and the your media management, and the display of the information that media does. Public grievances are also addressed when we, how they are addressed, who will address. So clear roles and responsibilities. Budget, every time we see that whatever action you envisage, people will say that we don't have a budget for this. But as Mr. Vikram Guja was discussing, that you have now you have after this act also, or you had earlier CRF and NCCF, but now you have disaster risk management fund at the national level and at the state level, which you can utilize for planning as well as capacity building. Provisions of DM Act. Yes, DM Act tells you that each and every entity must have a DM plan, because plan is what will give you a better response, a better mitigation, better growth, and a better development. So for all this, the DM Act says that yes, you have to have DM plan for every entity which is there. Your policy also talks about relief, rehabilitation, awareness, and how you can do that. This figures is in the plan. So all the things that National DM Policy or DM Act talks, they all talk about that. It is very necessary to have a plan before you act. DDMA, this is, I'm not going into detail because this is the, if you read the act, then you will find all this. Functions related to disaster management plan, when we talk of DDMA, yes, it talks about preparation of the plan, dynamic plan, including response plan, coordinate, monitor, evaluate that plan. Plan should be in consonance with the state plan and the sub-district plan, the state plan, the district plan, state plan, national plan. It should be all in consonance, because if you don't have the consonance, then everybody will be working in haywire and there will be a chaos on ground. Vulnerable areas identification, vulnerability analysis, that is what is required. Hazard analysis, vulnerability analysis, and vulnerability analysis in all four corners, all four pillars: physical vulnerability, economic vulnerability, this environmental vulnerability, and social vulnerability. All four pillars are to be taken care of when we talk of plan, vulnerability analysis, and similarly in terms of capacity that we do. These are all what the DM Act says, powers and functions of DDMA, that you submit the plan to the DDMA, they will approve it at the district level, and district level sends it to state level, wherein the state DMA state authority approves that plan, and the state authority gives it to the national authority, and the at the state level, basically it is approved, and for the NDMA, it is basically the different ministries, different departments at the central level, different entities at the national level. All national entities will be submitting the plan to NDMA, which approves the plan. NEC makes the plan, and basically NDMA has one portion of doing approving that plan. So these are the functions that we do as DDMA. Monitor implementation. And evaluation of a plan is must, because it is a dynamic in nature. It cannot be static, because every disaster, every time ground realities change, disaster intensities change, and also with this advent of the climate change impact, the intensity, the season, everything is changing of the disaster. So if you have a static disaster management plan, then the addressing of these situations, which see funny cyclone, it came in you have cyclone season in October to November, but the funny cyclone came in May, the summer cyclone. So if you have a DDMP, if you have a disaster management plan addressing for say October and say, and you don't have anything activity which can address that in May. So that is there. So every disaster gives you new dimensions to see. So implementation, monitoring, evaluation of a plan is must. Preparedness measures, keep on reviewing, do the drills. NDMA, we have Colonel, Major General Nayak, who also was involved in so many mock drills. So mock drills are very necessary, and in your DDMA, your DMP, the disaster management plan, must talk of mock drills. Drilling is necessary because when you act on ground, on a simulated situation, you at times find that there are problems on ground which may be due to coordination, maybe due to resource reaching, maybe due to the ground realities. So to get that ground reality on board, you must have drills and coordinate the organize and coordinate the drills. Voluntary the first and the foremost thing of a plan is that for whom you are making a plan, you must involve them, because the ownership of that plan, the authority of that plan, the knowledge of that plan, the awareness of that plan, for all stakeholders, at least those for whom you are making, is a must. So you must involve people on ground to make that, because at times you get so many information from them, knowledge from them, which you might, as a responder or as an officer, you might not, your thinking might not go on that details. They have their own ways to do the things. So that is what is necessary. All departments, as I was saying, guidelines had to be laid down by the DDMA, which NDMA has already laid down in the plan. 2016, the NDMA had a national plan, and 2019 they have revised that plan. Advise and coordinate. If you need technical assistance, yes, DDMAs will be providing to you, and they'll help you in making a plan. And don't feel shy in getting people on board who can make a plan for you with your help, facilitate you in making a plan. So don't feel shy. Information SDMA functions, everything is to be done. Communication systems are should be there foolproof, because that, if that goes down, then the linkages between the on ground people and the people sitting in the EOC is diverted, and it breaks down. So when it breaks down, it becomes difficult for them to work, to communicate what resources they need. And similar is the thing of EOC, to inform the people on ground that the situation, the environmental situation of where you are working might change in certain period of time. So this is how plan is made. You submit it to DDMA, DDMA to SDMA, and that SDMA approves the plan. Yes, it is done. So and the copy is to be made available to for each stakeholder at a state level, at district level, and for each stakeholder. Why? Because they are the role players. They must know. And for every plan, if you have a bulky document of a plan, you must have actionable plans out of those bulky document of a plan. And everybody should know that where plan is there. So this is how things are to be done. Response plan, I'm not going to detail. Major General Nayak would be discussing on the how response scenario is taken care of when you are making a plan. That allocation of roles and responsibilities, where the relief camp is to be set up, who will manage the relief camp, where the distribution, where will be the resources to be distributed on ground, where the manpower who is coming to assist will be kept. Everything comes in the response plan, that yes, this is the response. And it also talks about how when the things stabilize, how those responders who have come to help will go back safely and reach their destination. District plan, different plans. I have already discussed about this, how different departments must, and the structure that NDMA site has, that structure can be followed even below the district level also, and even in the entities also. I have just changed that at place of district. You have area profile, wherever, whatever area you are taking, that profile is to be there. Local authorities, you must have a dialogue. See, if you are in a university, you must have a dialogue with the local authorities, that how things are to be done, what help you can give, what help you can take. So that information sharing should be there, and you must know that whosoever is there as an authority, how and what help they can provide in terms of disaster management, and what role exactly they have. You must not ask anybody anything which doesn't fall in their purview. So that clarity should be there with you, so that the information sharing, the flow of information, the flow of command, the flow of help is not hindered and falls within the purview. This is what DDMA has been given under the Act, that you can require, if you require anybody, any officer, any entity for the management of the disaster, then you have the power to requisition it and get it on ground. The DDMA, also the DDM Act also has provisions of penalties if you don't follow, or if you supply the rumors. So after that DDM Act, we have seen a rise in the PILs on the activities that are being given on ground. So thank you very much. This is what my presentation was all about. So whatever questions we'll have, we'll be discussing in the end. So over to you, Arun.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now I invite Major General V.K. Naik, Senior Consultant NDMA. Sir will be speaking on mechanism of emergency response. Major General Dr. V.K. Naik, AVSM, is presently working as a Senior Consultant at National Disaster Management Authority, New Delhi. Sir is Kirti Chakra awardee. I invite you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible, please?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you. It's a great pleasure speaking to participants today, and in association with NIDM and a very reputed educational institution. I will basically touch upon the response part of disaster management. As I can see from yesterday's schedule and what has been spoken today, you all have a very broad idea of what all disaster management is about, what it consists, and what is the whole structure, how it unfolds on ground, long-term, short-term. Vikram Gurjar has already told about the international settings, bringing out to the national settings. So I'll simply like you to get certain practical aspects, how it practically unfolds, and how disaster management unfolds. I'll not touch on that. I only touch on the response part of disaster management, how it unfolds on ground. So I will basically, my aim is to tell you about, is the screen seen now, or is it getting blocked now?
No, it's visible, sir.
Okay, okay. So I'll make it in presentation mode, or
Yes,
this is okay, or?
No, it would be helpful, sir, if you put it in a presentation mode.
Yeah. View and slide mode.
Slide shows.
Oh, view, normal slide show. It is reading notes. Okay. Just a minute. This has gone to normal.
Yes, sir. Plus shift and F5. Shift and
Okay.
F5 simultaneously.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you for this.
It's
Thank
fine.
you for this. And sorry for my ignorance. So
problem.
basically, we will talk of institutional mechanism. In that, how response is done and how we conduct response operations on ground. All of you must have seen a lot of disasters. We saw the Amphan cyclone recently. We all know about urban flooding. Most recent Hyderabad. Before that, Chennai floods. You must see a lot of distress on ground, and you must also have seen a lot of response happening at district level, state level, national level. And my aim is just to tell you systematically how it happens on ground. So disaster, you all know about it. What is it all about? Basically, you don't have the coping capacity. That is how someone has to help you. And this is the very famous disaster management cycle. I'm only showing you to tell you that disaster response is one part of disaster management. Like Shekhar just now brought out, when you do planning, there's a plan for prevention, the plan for mitigation, the plan for reconstruction. So disaster response is only part, and that is a most visible part of disaster response. Today, if something goes wrong and we lose huge amount of life and property, that is what people remember. This slow reconstruction, training, better prepared for next disasters will not be seen so much by people. So this is where I fit in. This has already been spoken to. You know about disaster management, planning, organization, coordinating, and all those things. In this, response is one part. So response, what does it involve? What is response all about? So we'll mainly focus on this. So response are all measures which are taken immediately prior to and following a disaster. If we got a warning from India Met Department for our coastal areas, we have Andhra, we have West Bengal, a couple of districts, we have complete Tamil Nadu, Kerala coast, Arabian Sea, Bombay, Goa, everything. And you get the warning from IMD for a cyclone, which happens very often. So action taken before the cyclone strikes to inform people, to tell the fishermen not to go to seas, high seas, to tell villagers to evacuate. All this is part of response. And also all the actions which take place on as and when the disaster actually strikes. That is also part of response. That is why I say all actions taken immediately prior to and following a disaster fall within the category of disaster response. And all these response actions are basically aimed towards saving lives, protecting property, and dealing with immediate damage caused by a disaster. Now, how do we go about responding in a systematic way? You know this famous act, enough has spoken about it, but I would like to add only one thing. This act binds everyone in the country in the system of governance to play their part in risk reduction and responding. So if somebody is not doing his duty, here is an act which pins them down. There could be a public interest litigation, and even a government official may have to respond. Even the government may have to respond as to what steps are taken to reduce the risk. Just to tell you, since you are in this is talking to educational institution, the school safety program in the country, the questions were raised as to what is exactly happening in the country to reduce the risk to our children. And now monitoring committee is there. Every district education officer is sending a report upwards, and Supreme Court has asked report every month as to what is actually happening on ground. So this is the power of this act. So enough has been spoken about this DM Act, but just see, when we come to response, there are people who are in governance planning for response, and there are people on ground for response. So this structure has already been told to NDMA, NIDM, higher committees, but on ground we have armed forces, we have NDRF, we have SDRF, we have civil, central paramilitary forces, civil defense, fire services, home guards, police. We have the people like organization from Nehru Yuva Kendra. We have, in addition to civil defense, we may have NCC senior citizen students coming, and at the base of it, we have the community. So the national policy lays down that we have to focus on community-based disaster management. So anywhere and everywhere, community is the first responder. Even for a fire incident today in neighborhood, the people will start fighting fire, and after a couple of minutes, the fire engine may come. So we have the roles and responsibilities laid down. Every ministry has got specific disaster responsibility, and they have to organize response at national level and at the state level. For instance, you see if there is a problem in any nuclear facility today, Department of Atomic Energy has to take action, and they have to have plans along with the DDMA, along with the SDMA, how to handle an off-site emergency. Since we're talking of response, this is what I would like you to register for various kind of hazards: cyclones, tsunami, earthquake, floods, landslide, avalanche. We have the nodal agencies nominated: India Met Department, Central Water Commission, NCOIS. These are people which will give early warning to NDMA, MHA, SDMA, DDMA, and even at community level, and a lot of systems already exist today. Coming to response per se on ground, what should be the quality of disaster response? You will agree with me that when people are in distress, when an earthquake has struck, when a couple of buildings are under fire, when a couple of houses have collapsed, or whole community in a particular urban setup or village setup, a couple of villages are under flood, you need the response to be comprehensive, effective, swift, and well planned. Comprehensive means if the responders reach there and they don't have medicines for those who have, if they're gone without a medical team, it's not a comprehensive response. If they are not in time, it's not an effective response. And it is not well planned response is required. It means we must know that given a situation, we should be able to foresee, and we must have structures, we must have resources as to when we land on ground, we land with the whole wherewithal to help people save their lives, help people mitigate their miseries, help further damage and destruction. So this is what we need to have a response mechanism for. And you, as I told you, you must have seen many major tragedies. Now, what are the shortcomings? Whenever a major problem happens, the shortcomings in response are now listed. You see accountability problem. Somebody says it's not my job. There is no planning process, ad hoc. Some buildings have collapsed, rush police there, rush NDRF there. When you're going there, when you realize you just can't reach there. So further delay in the response. So lack of orderly and systematic planning. Chain of command. If I am the district magistrate and if I am not present, who takes over? Or if I am the district magistrate and I have a hospital to be ready, because I expect 100, 200 casualties, mass casualty scenario is there, and the senior, the district medical officer not present, what is the chain of command? Someone has to rise to occasion, someone has to handle things. So these are the gaps, and these are shortcomings. When things go wrong, they go wrong because of these issues. Lack of proper communication. Communication have different connotations. Communication is one physical means of communication. Your radio sets are off, your mobiles have gone. So how do you communicate? In an earthquake scenario, in a flood scenario, in a hurricane, mobile towers may come down. That is one. And second, what do you communicate? Even if systems are okay, your fiber optic is okay, you can communicate. But what do you communicate? What do you tell the communities? So that is also part of this response. You have telephones working, you have radio working, you have TV working. But if you can't just write warning to the fisherman not to go to high seas, then it's bad communication. Lack of systematic methods, lack of coordination between first responders, individuals, professionals. When I reach to respond, who will receive me? If NDRF is coming from outside. What will the district police do? Who will tell them the route where to go? Who will decide if a job is over, when the NDRF team will go back or when I go back? Who will decide if Air Force is required to pick up some casualties, if Air Force is required to drop some food? Who will coordinate all that? So these are coordination problems, and more often than not, time is wasted. When something big happens, Air Force comes to help you. District magistrate asks, where in so-and-so village that place is flooded. Where do we land? And there is no one to tell where is the nearest helipad. Even if there's a helipad, there's a crowd gathered there. And the helicopter comes from top, he looks down, he just cannot land there because there are hundreds and hundreds of people waiting for helicopter and there's no police there for crowd management. So when safety is involved, helicopter won't land. So all these issues are there. So these are basic problems in response in pressure time. When losing lives, losing property, and everybody wants quick action. That time, if you go for unplanned response, you are not efficient. You are not doing your job well. So response to disaster has to be as per a system, and that system is nothing but what is known in our country as incident response system. We have evolved a system as to how to manage the disaster response operation in particular, and the National Disaster Management Authority has come with a proper guideline. Now, for any operation on ground, even a small work, even a small function in your homes, there are 4 issues which already have to be managed. One is planning, what is to be done. Second is operation, who will do it. Third is logistics, with what you will do it. And fourth is money, finance, budgets. So everything is involved into this, included into this response system. And this response, don't think about one building on fire, one fire brigade has come, 4 hours, firefighting done, they have gone back. Look at the big scenarios like it happened in Hyderabad recently, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. The disaster was there. Chennai floods, 15 days. Amphan cyclone, 7, 8 days. Calcutta came to normal, even 20 days it took for them to clear the trees on the road. So we're talking of that kind of response, and not for a small incident where, say, the road accident is actually a disaster, but see it from a different perspective. And that is why we need this response. So in response, what do we do? After all, you ask a district magistrate to respond to a flood. Unless it is well defined, what all he'll need to do, and what are the main constituents of this response. We have our National Disaster Management Plan, as per which we are supposed to make state and district plans. The Professor Sheikh has spoken about it just now. So this responsive matrix is straight from the national plan. You have to have early warning, maps, satellite inputs. Without this, you cannot respond well. You have to think about evacuation of people and animals. When you respond, you may have to evacuate people. When you respond, you may have to do search and rescue of people and animals. When you respond, you may have to go medical care. You will have to give drinking water, dewatering pumps, sanitation facilities, public health, food and essential supplies, communication, housing and temporary shelters. People will come out of their houses in earthquake, they don't go back 4 or 5 days because of the after effects, aftershocks, or in floods, the houses simply have gone. Villages have been evacuated. Where do they live? Where do they stay? Who manages the camp? Who gives them food? Even if you have a camp, there are tremendous issues. There are gender issues, there are hygiene center issues, there are ladies, children, the lactating mothers. So unless response has been planned, Shekhar did speak about response plan. Even response is planned well. So I'm just flashing to you what all needs to be done in response. Power, fuel, transportation. Your power generation may go off. Your fuel have to be managed. Imagine a city like Shimla or a city like Uti in the south, where only one road is coming from Coimbatore and getting down to Bangalore that side. And You have limited fuel in the town and your roads are cut off. You have to ration the fuel. You have to give fuel to the hospitals. You have to give the fuel to the government office. You have to give fuel to the for power generation, for critical facilities, and you have to plan for it. Similarly, disposal of animal carcasses, fodder, livestock, data collection. And let me see the time also. Yeah, we have time till 4 o'clock, and I think about I may at the most overshoot by 5 minutes, not more than that. So these are the functions which will happen during a response operation. Now you saw these 16 odd functions. So for a major response operation, you can imagine you need the whole system for response, and that system is nothing but actually the disaster incident response system. In NIDM, when we do IRS cadres, we take whole week for telling one part of it. Now we have a couple of minutes, so please understand. At the state level, there is chief secretary responsible and officer, and at the district level, a district magistrate who is the responsible officer. After that, he has to depute someone as incident commander, and he has to have people under him. See the lowermost lines. There is people who are in operating section, people who are in planning section, people who are in logistics section. And as the person responsible, incident commander, you have to have your close staff. Like if I am a additional district magistrate in a town, my DM may make me an incident commander for disasters. Now this team is fixed. It may be earthquake, it may be a flood, it may be a huge law and order problem which is not part of disaster, but I am the commander, and I have to have a safety officer, I have to have a media officer, I have to have a liaison officer. You see on top there is nodal officer, air operations. A whole district has got flooded. You have to drop rations for a couple of villages. So who coordinates the Air Force? It happened in one of the disasters, whole Kochi airport was gone. It's not operational. So in Chennai airport was gone in floods. The Air Force was operating from there. So who coordinates all that? You have to nodal officer, air operation, helps the district magistrate or helps the state chief secretary at that level. So we talk at district level, operation, planning and logistics. And basically what will happen in operations, they will deploy people on ground. The army which comes, the police, the fire brigade, and all the people listed before, they'll be organized in groups and sent on ground to help. Planning is actually the nerve center. There are a group of people sitting together. They're getting inputs, they're getting data. They know what has happened. They know when it has happened. They know what it is required, and they plan and they send people on ground. And logistics and finance again provides logistics on ground. And red, I have written in red, cost accountant. In government systems, the audit and all comes into play. So we want to have financial elements included in planning itself while the operations are going on. Just to give an example, if a district magistrate wants to spend say 50 lakhs on something, and if powers are only 40 lakhs, then and there he'll be told take permission from chief secretary or someone in government and go ahead or do the needful so there's no audits later on. Or you need more aid from the central government, how the financial will flow, all that is done by the financial advisors, part of the incident response system. So what is it? It is basically important tool for minimizing loss of life and property and strengthening and standardizing the disaster response mechanism. This is emergency support functions. Operation section takes on search and rescue, firefighting, evacuation, law and order. Planning section takes on damage assessment, helpline, forecasting. Logistics take on medical, communication, food, shelter, etc. Now, this will be a huge system of more than 100 people, more than 200 people. Under logistics commander, there are so many people handling so many things. So we won't go in details, but let me tell you the duties of each and every person, what he will do is already written down. So if you follow the IRS system for response at district level, state level, village level, and even in the industry, even for an institution like an educational institution, if something goes wrong, who will do what? This is universally applicable. This is just an example of Himachal Pradesh. They have said, you see, facilities unit, chief engineer building. ground support chief engineer, PWD. C, B, transport branch, secretary, general admission department. So they have already decided, they already notified in case of crisis who will do what. So who are the officials involved in disaster? At state level, we have various secretaries who are Secretary Health, Secretary Revenue, Secretary Industries, and all the departments have their sub-departments at district level. So from, say, health, like pandemic is going on today. So what awareness to be done is lying, state is planning, it's coming to district, going to district. So top to bottom, bottom to top, information flows and planning flows and response also flows. See serial 14 and 15, representatives of telecom service providers, representatives of border road organization were relevant when roads go in forward areas, or when towers or Airtel will go. BSNL is government, they will come and do the needful, but Airtel also should come quickly. The Geo should also come quickly to restore the mobile communication. It is their duty, and our contracts with government does, it has to ensure all that. Otherwise, they being a purely profit earning corporate, they may delay, but that is where the requirement of proper planning involving even corporate sector in disaster response. At district level is district collector, SSP, chief medical officer, fire officer. Each and every department will be involved in response some or other, because those 16 emergency support functions which are flashed already are functions of routine administration, even if there is no disaster. The medical branch is functioning, the supply branch in district is functioning, the petroleum branch in district is functioning. So that is where we are. So now I'll just quickly tell you how it unfolds on ground. There are a couple of slides and 3-4 more minutes. When something goes wrong, you're supposed to have an incident response system. You're supposed to have incident response teams. You're supposed to have a district emergency operation center where all communications are tied up, and all responsible people, all commanders, all senior officers will come to district emergency operation center and state emergency operation center, and they will have a EOC meeting. Now, an earthquake has struck, suppose, or something has gone wrong. People get together quickly in emergency operations meeting in district or state, and they get all the feed in what has happened, and they start talking to each other, and they decide how to go about it. So some sort of planning starts. In planning section, gets inputs and start planning. This is what the planning is going on. People are getting inputs. This is the logistics section in particular, from where the food is to come, from where the water has to come, whether fuel is not there or not, or what is to be done. That planning is to all the sections, logistic, planning and operations start functioning together in the district or state emergency operation center. Thereafter, all assets and personnel report to nominated staging area. This staging area is nothing, it's an open area place. There could be more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 staging areas, because we don't know in this thing like earthquake or flood where exactly we'll have space. But we have to have place where all resources are coming together. Just to give an idea, this is somewhere in some town where the police has come, the fire brigade has come, the NCC volunteers are coming, because at this point of time in the emergency operation center, the planning is going on. Disaster response is not first come, first serve. You have to have the complete assessment of situation, because you will more often than not short of resources. So you have to prioritize and send the resources. So at here, there will teams will be made. For example, if there is say a cyclone and some houses have gone, you will have to have people you have to have ambulances, you will have to have people who can cut the trees and clear the roads, you will have to have people who can do collapse structure search and rescue like NDRF teams. You may have to have people who restore the communication. So you make teams and deploy them on ground as per a plan. This is what is happening here, and also getting together. Damage assessment is carried out in the emergency operation center. Somewhere only 10 houses collapsed and we're getting reported 10 people, 20 people injured. Some we are getting 50 houses collapsed and many people are buried. So if NDRF team is flying to that town, they should be sent to that area first. If we got no information about a place, and if it happens that there is a bigger damage there, then the level is raised. The district magistrates talk to chief secretary and more NDRF comes, more army teams come, and they again deployed as per a plan. So this is a damage assessment has to be done. And based on that, these troops, this is a chemical disaster scenario where troops are on ground. The responders are gone on ground, casualty questions going on, and there's this particular plant. And based upon what is to be done, people who have to go on ground, they are briefed, they are allotted resources, an incident action plan is made, task force, which I told you, are made, a grouping of people are made to go on ground and respond, and they start operating on ground. When they go on ground, they have to make an establishment a command post, because from here, you will give a feedback to operation center. Whether we get of resources, we thought there were 10 casualties, but there are 20 people lying, 20 dead, so many animals, so many people, send more ambulances, send more people. All those things have to be discussed from this kind of a command post. From day, night, wherever you've gone on ground, the feed-in has to go to district emergency operation center. This is how operations are going on, response. Now, casualties have to be moved out, triage carried out. It's not first come first. A triage has to be done on the site, because a person bleeding very badly may not be, his life may necessarily not be at risk, but a person who got head injury may have to reach hospital earliest. So doctors will do triage, and then they will send people from there. Otherwise, the scene of ambulances coming and just taking people away may not be the right thing to happen, because very soon you will get exhausted of ambulances, and when actual people are there to evacuate it, ambulances will take time to return from hospital. Similarly, all hospitals will have to the surge capacity, they will have to additional beds, and here is where the hospital plans, like departmental plans Shekhar spoke of, every ministry, medical department has to have plans right up to the hospital, that if they have 100 extra casualties, how will they manage? So this is the surge capacity in hospital, and evacuation has to be planned if needed. Now here is the say, from where is this transport come? For district magistrate, there is an evacuation plan. The regional transport officer, the RTO has made sure that he gets buses, he gets cars, whatever, and he sends them on the ground. That is what the planning is done. And if required, in case of chemical disaster, decontamination is done, area made safe, the shelter has to be created, food, water, hygiene, sanitation has to be done. And when situation is under control, you have to demobilize all your resources, get them back to a place, because imagine 10 districts in flood, you may have to redeploy them, and that has to be as per a plan. It's not on the ad hoc basis. So complete planning is done once again. So on 24-hour cycle in the emergency operation center of a district, or in the state, or at the national level, this 24-hour cycle goes on. As you must be knowing, Chennai floods, Nepal earthquake, the National Executive Committee is meeting almost twice a day to see the operations. And that is how the plans are recycled, reviewed, and new plans are made every 24 hours, and deployment is done, because situation is changing, resources are changing, somewhere we are mitigated, somewhere we need more help. So this has to be ongoing plan. So this is what a review meeting, and they're making for preparing for next day's plan. So this is what I thought I'd quickly give you a glimpse of how it unfolds on ground. So I was very encouraged to see that more than 150 people are there on this program. So if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer. I'm sorry for rushing through, but aim was to tell you how major response operations unfold on ground. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Now it's time for question and answer session. If somebody have any question, Isha can put into the chat box.
Arun, there were 4 to 5 questions which I have already answered.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
sir.
I think right now there is only a request for feedback link in the question
Yeah,
answer
sir. Yes,
chat
sir.
box. So if anybody has a question, we would love to be facilitate and reply to that. or otherwise what we would request, if right now you don't have a question, you can write to we all have shared the email IDs with Dr. Vignesh. So if you can send it to Vignesh, so he can just forward it to us so that we can reply in case if you do not have right now any question.
Yes, sir. They can write to me, and the feedback link will be shared tomorrow, sir, over mail. Once the session, all the 3-day programs are over, we can share the feedback form to all the participants over the mail, sir.
Right.
Shekhar, only one piece of advice to all the participants. Since so much exposure is given to you, what is the takeaway, take home for you? Wherever you are, whichever capacity you are a teacher, you are a manager, you are an engineer, in your work domain, just see, because of various hazards, what can go wrong, and are you prepared for it or not? What will happen, what can happen, and what will you do? If you can start thinking on those lines, you would have strengthened the whole community for response or for better preparedness. That's what I wanted to convey. Thank you so much.
Sir, there is a question which directly addresses to NDMA. The question is from Mr. Omkar Puri, which says that what are the apps used to get first responder feedback by NDMA, NEC, MHA, other relevant departments and ministries?
What are the apps used?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we have well-structured, well-designed, formalized apps for response, because disaster management per se, including response, is the duty of various states and union territories. So when central government actually is complementing the efforts of state government as and when required. We have even the NDRF is a central resource. It's only on humanitarian grounds today that the NDRF, the Indian Army, the paramilitary forces, everybody moves on a small phone call also from district magistrate. The formalities follow, but still these are the resources which central government has put at the disposal of state governments, and basic job of responses or disaster management per se, long term, short term, is of state governments. And I'm afraid I'm not aware of specific apps. I'm aware of various systems. Today we have early warning systems, and where the IMD or various early warning people are sending messages directly to the community, especially in coastal areas. So those things are there. But apps, I'm not sure, but there are many helplines on which in various districts in coastal areas, in our hinterland, helplines are available. The NDM is working on something called Common Alert Protocol, where you will start getting feedback from community from a lot of people, but those are very, very specialized ones. Whether they're available to masses or not, I'm not aware of it at the moment. But if there's a pointed question, it could be sent to us. We can always answer that. Thank you.
Yeah, in addition to what Major General Nayak has said, see, at the disaster, for every disaster, many of the agencies, they come up with different apps. Say for need assessment, they can have, for dissemination of the information, they can have. Say, see, IMD has from their dissemination thing, they have now come for the nowcast dissemination. And in terms of Kerala floods, we had students from Anandmai Engineering Institute who had developed app for say need assessment, for which was circulated at that. So for every disaster, you have people from the community who are coming in with certain apps which are being used by the agencies. So right now, accumulation and exact pinpointed information about those apps becomes would be a little difficult to tell what exactly are the apps that are being used. Arun, there is any more question?
There is a question that the biggest problem is coordination. How does one get this done with the best outcome at all levels? This is a good general we can ask sir के लिए. This is question to we can ask sir. Sir,
So biggest problem is what?
the
Coordination.
biggest problem is coordination. How does one get this done with the best outcome at all levels?
See, at all levels, coordination is indeed the crux, and that is why if we have an incident response system, then this coordination is taken care of. What do you need to coordinate? You need to coordinate all aspects of a plan. Just to make it simpler, when we write a military plan, there is a whole para on coordination, which says what needs to be coordinated. It simply says, like in a layman's language, coordination simply means that if you're coming to my home and I have to give you food, my plan will say that 4 o'clock Mr. X will come with 4 people and food should be ready. But your plan, plan for Mr. X, coordinating instruction will say that at 4 o'clock reach Mr. Naik's house to have food. Because if I am ready with food, if I don't reach, there's total lack of coordination. So everything which is happening in response needs to be coordinated. And it is indeed a problem, and that is why we are taking this incident response system down to state levels, down to district levels. And for your information, when we recently, before pandemic, we did exercise where the chief secretary as a responsible state was sitting with all his team members at state level. There are 12 district magistrates of Himachal sitting with their team in their districts, and we are doing this kind of take-up exercise where we're asking them questions, and they simply said, we'll get the NDRF team. How will you get it? Who will get it? How will the message will go? All these coordination issues are there. So the training of IRS is the fundamental tool to train our responders, train people in administration, train people in corporate world who will come to alongside with administration, train NGOs who will come alongside administration to respond. Everybody will fall under IRS. We are telling if there are 5 NGOs in a town, and if one NGO is wanting to give food, if other NGO can give only tents, we must know it beforehand, and it should be part of the plan. It shouldn't happen that one NGO just runs a district magistrate कि मैं 5 गाड़ियां लेकर आ रहा हूं, I'm coming with 10 vehicles to help, and he comes with tents which no one has needs, no one has planned. So all that is coordination. So in all plans, the coordination has to be written down. The major issues are written down, and the training we are doing. So in all our DM training, coordination is being taken care of. Yes. Okay.
Any more question, Arun?
Yeah, there is a question that how to record the first responder difficulties or the best practices or lessons learned to be properly recorded into the system and shared from bottom up. How to check deviation in this regard?
How to record the first responder difficulties or the best practices or lessons learned to be properly recorded into the system and shared from bottom up, or how to check deviation in this regard. Sir, would you like to address this?
Yeah, partly I can address, and then you can take on after that. The first responders are first responder community. So if community is not prepared, they know where they went wrong, what they need to do, how to strengthen themselves. Now community needs to help to better train, that is one angle. But come to systematic response where you have in the fire brigade, the medical, police and fire. These are basic responders at the lowest level other than community. Then come external agencies like NDRF, armed forces, paramilitary forces. So coming to NDRF, NDRF is a highly trained force, and every operation they do, they prepare their report. Report is sent right up to the ministry, and problem areas are noted. And all those things they are registering for improving their own response. We should be very proud of them. In Nepal earthquake, from Ghaziabad, only in less than 2 hours time, the team was at the Hindon military air base to be flown. This is part of the training. Now, lesson learned, maybe sometimes they were late, maybe they tied up, sometimes what went wrong. So with every operation we improve. So since situations are very dynamic, there is no particular laid down SOP like it will happen in an operation theater when somebody has to be going through an operation. That this is what surgeon will do, this is what anesthesiologist will do, this is what the physician will do. On ground, people to apply their mind. But the response agencies who are specialists, they take a feedback and that feedback goes right up. So that is what I have to say.
In addition to this, what we can also talk in this, that we now are switching over to incident response system, which itself has a proper documentation unit in that, which will be documenting the entire incident planning and entire incident activities that are done, wherein you have NIMHANS, which is going in for additional support on the psychosocial front. There are NGOs who go in for support of food distribution or certain relief distribution. So the difficulties of common man are certainly being taken care of, addressed, and also documented to a certain extent. Yes, I right now we can't say that entire difficulties are being documented, but yes, to a certain extent they are being documented, and people sitting at the district emergency operations center or local level emergency operations center or state emergency operations center are taking care of to the extent possible about the difficulties, and addressing those in times say at during the disaster also and post disaster also. Thank you.
Shekhar, just to add, just an example of how do you learn from response. If we take our mind back about 2 years back, there was a train near Thane, between Thane and Kalyan near Bombay, which was under floods. It was halting. It had halted on a track, and water was all over. And NDRF went for rescue. NDRF did go for rescue. Rescued a lot of people. Boats were launched. They brought people out. But this misery of 6 hours, the whole train, about 1,400 people. And I had the privilege of interacting with a lot of railway officials. Now, what do you learn from this? Now, without being critical, NDRF boys moved. I spoke to the company commander who went for rescue. They moved quickly, as fast as they could, but they did not get a green corridor. Now, in a town like Bombay in heavy rains, if police comes to help and they make sure that there is no traffic on roads, NDRF would at least half an hour early. So this is what the difficulties of response. When they were moving, then they perhaps realized, and then somebody in district, it was not their job. Their job was to go quickly. It was somebody else's job, and that is what will be taken care of, as Shekhar is telling, an incident response system, where the operation branch boss is the SSP of the district, and he'll quickly tell the traffic police, I want the road clear from Bombay to Thane. Please make sure that the 5 vehicles of NDRF must pass quickly. And we have seen it happening. We see newspaper reports where some heart transplant had to take place and green corridor was given. Somebody did it, but it's all part of coordination, and this is the kind of lessons we learn. Same question I asked the railway people. They have to have the departmental plan. I said, Parle G glucose biscuit, 5 rupees. How many of them are readily available to you for giving to anybody in emergency? So this is all part of learning, and it happens because the food and all had to be reached by a separate mechanism. It was not available. Nobody went quickly and gave food to the people who were getting feared or getting drowned. The whole train would get washed away, etc. That much for this. Thank you.
Any more question, Arun?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, then I think we close for today. Any addition from Vignesh?
No, sir, we can close it now, sir. No problem.
Okay.
We can start it tomorrow. Same link.
Right. We'll be joining tomorrow at the same time, same link.
Yes.
Vikram sir, do you have something to add? I think he's okay. So we close. We thank all the experts who were there today, and they shared their experiences, their presentations, and I would request to the presenters that if they can share the presentation, so that there was certain queries about from the participants, that presentations if can be shared, that will be helpful for them. So whatever possible sharing can be done, may please be done, so that I can forward it to Vignesh, who can in turn give it to the participants for their convenience and for their help. So with that, I thank Major General V.K. Nayak for giving us an insight on the response operationalization on ground. Vikram Gujarji for institutional mechanism that is on ground, which helps, which is the backbone of disaster management in any country. And India, although very good at response, is now becoming good at preparedness measures also. I also thank Arun for, although he rushed through his presentation, but yes, that presentation was also of help, because it gave us the very concepts, the very you can say the base for disaster management program, and also disaster management in the country. So I thank Arun for helping out and sharing his experiences. I thank Vignesh and his team from SRMIST for making this possible. So thank you all. Thank you the participants for asking the questions and making us toil on that replies and the questions. We have with us very learned participants. We hope the same enthusiasm tomorrow also. With that, we close for today, and we'll back with the same link, same time tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.